Yo, yo, yo. Welcome in, friends. Welcome in, RotoBaller family. Welcome in anyone out there who is excited for Masters Week. My name is Joe Idone. At TourPix is the place to find me on X. And you have stumbled your way upon the RotoBaller Mega Masters Preview Show. We have an entire group of anyone who contributes content on the RotoBaller PGA team. We're super fired up for this week. This is our Super Bowl. I'm giddy. The azaleas are blooming. I just drank myself an energy drink to get extra hype for this episode. I got some friends along the way with me. Let's bring them on now without further ado. The man behind RotoBaller PGA that brings us all together, Mr. Joe Nicely. Welcome in this evening. You fired up for Masters Week, buddy?
Fired up, man. It's springtime, favorite event of the year. Love all the content we're pumping out and can't wait, man. Can't wait to talk about it with you a little bit.
Let's go. I got one more to bring to the stage. My co-host for this evening over the next hour, the one, the only award-winning Tee-Off Sports, Spencer Aguiar. Good evening. Welcome to Masters Week, buddy.
Joe, I'm very excited to be able to do this with you today. By the way, I have to tell you, I like the Preferred Line shirt that you have. I saw you send a tweet out today talking about all the merchandise that you have. Tell everybody about that for a second.
Yeah, for sure. So just got them in the mail today, actually. New Preferred Lines tees. If you'd like one, it's the best way to support the show. Obviously, the show is exclusively presented each and every week by the RotoBaller team and the good folks over there. Appreciate their support. But if you're enjoy the show, if you want to support me, anything else like that, feel free to DM me. I got some that I'm going to be giving away on the show that I announced yesterday as well. So pretty fired up about this week.
Yeah, very nice.
Joe Nicely, I got something else that people should be fired up about. New promo code is out now for all RotoBaller Premium PGA subscription. The code is Masters, all caps. Will be in the description of this video on YouTube with a link to the site. If you want to just punch it in, all caps Masters, that's 30% off any premium package. That includes Spencer's package. That gives you unfiltered access to all the people that we're going to bring onto the show tonight. Joe, talk a little bit more about the promo that we're running this week and how excited we are to get it rolling.
Yeah, really excited, man. It's our best deal of the year, honestly. As you mentioned, you save 30% off with promo code Masters when you sign up now. You can obviously sign up for Spencer's package, the Tee-Off Sports. It's amazing. We also have the PGA Gold, which Joe and Joe contribute to. But I definitely recommend just going with the PGA Platinum. That's everything, all in one. Discord, you can have access to Joe, access to Spencer. And just amazing content year round. A lot of folks pop up and kind of cover this stuff during Masters Week, but we do this every week of the year that there's a golf tournament. So we hope you folks will hop over to rotoballer.com, use that promo code Masters, save 30%.
Yeah, the abundance of great people that we have, and you're going to meet some of them later tonight, just contributing and the ability to have access to a site where you hear different voices, different opinions. You can find the person that you feel coincides with the way that you think about betting or playing DFS golf. I just think the more options, the better. And it's something that you as kind of the leader of our team, Joe, have always been a big proponent in getting a diverse group of contributors who are good at different things to create this kind of wholesome group. But I wanted to talk to you a little bit, Joe, about the Masters Bible. I know it's one of the favorite pieces that you do each and every year. It is unbelievably detailed. You wrote about each and every player in the field. I'm not going to ask you to talk about all of them, but let's get right into Augusta National and the 2025 Masters. Joe, when you did that piece, who was probably your favorite and least favorite play? We're going to start in the high-priced range. Who was your top guy that you have up there and a guy that you're not so bullish on from your piece that you put out earlier this week?
Really like Colin Morikawa up at the top, guys. Probably not breaking news. I mean, we're going to talk about Scotty. We're going to talk about Rory. They're great plays. Prohibitive favorites to win this, but Morikawa really stood out to me kind of for his consistency. Not a lot of no wins really since 2023. It fell into 2023, but man, he's knocked on the door so many times. I think he's got 9 top 5s since that win at the Zozo in 2023. So just constantly in contention. The irons are back. We saw those go away for a little while, and Collins regained that. So he really sticks out to me at the top as one of my favorites. It's hard to pinpoint a guy that you don't like up there. I have some concerns. Obviously, with Jon Rahm, you just don't know where the form is. Coming over from Live. Honestly, when he jumped over there, I thought maybe we would see him, for lack of a better word, dominate a little bit more. But the Masters history for him is fabulous. I'm sure he's highly motivated to bounce back, but there are just some question marks with Rahm. So those are kind of the guys at the tippy tip top of the board. If we're picking a little bit, I would say Rahm. Morikawa is probably my favorite up there.
All right, so Rahm's the landmine for you to avoid in your lineups. Morikawa's the go-to guy. Morikawa, it would suit him well to maybe tone it down a little bit in the old press center. Anytime he opens his mouth, I'm just like, this freaking guy, Colin Morikawa, just seems so arrogant to me. Spencer, where are you at the top of the board? Give me your favorite high-price play and your least favorite high-price play headed into the week.
So I think that question, contest selection, is going to matter in what you're actually playing on DraftKings or whatever site you're doing your work on this week. I will say for any of the larger contests, we're talking millionaire makers and things like that, it's hard to stomach this answer, but I think if you don't start with Scotty, Rory, or Colin, you are immediately different from everybody else. You can just kind of do what you want from there. If you're playing in that contest and you want to use one of them, I would be very aware of what I'm rostering next to them. Like if a Rory McIlroy and Russell Henley and a Corey Connors, like all of those are going to be very duplicated lineups. So I think contest selection would be my answer that you need to be the most aware of at the end of the day. I see the ownership right now. Like you have Rory and Scotty at 25 plus. You have Colin at about 21 in my model. Rahm has been catching a little bit of steam. I saw him open on Monday at like 14, 15%. And now I have him at about 19 to 20%. The two leverage plays technically look like they're Oberg and DeChambeau. And the problem with me on that is that's probably my least two favorite plays to begin with. So if I'm trying to find a spot, and I'll dip it just a little bit further for a second, like Scotty's probably my favorite at the very, very top of the board. Mm-hmm. If I'm trying to find a way to create leverage and to get different, I really like Xander. I think Xander's the forgotten about guy. We just saw him gain almost 11 strokes approach. He's talked about the driver. The other golfer, and Joe mentioned this with even just Rahm a second ago, the live narrative that comes into play. We are like 2 years removed. And Joe, Tony, I know you are like one of the biggest Brooks Koepka supporters that there is out there. And I have never been a Brooks guy myself. I have faded Brooks in most majors, and over the last 6 majors that he's played, he has not been in any of my cores. I've had matchups against him. He's finished between 26 to outside of the top 40 in every single major. I think the pendulum has swung way too far on this Koepka answer. I would not be shocked if this is the tournament that Koepka comes out of nowhere and actually ends up winning this thing. So I'm going to have a lot of Brooks Koepka this week, and that is not typically the answer that I give on shows.
Yeah, I love to hear that. Listen, I'll 2 quick points there. You mentioned about Xander Schauffele, that round the tournament that he had at the Valspar, plus 11.2 on approach. That is the single best performance in terms of strokes gained approach in any tournament, in any field, on any tour, in the year 2025 by any player. So the best performance with his irons that we've seen across 6 major tours, across all types of fields, all types of tournaments, all types of players. Xander Schauffele gave us a sign that he may be much closer to being back than we can imagine, and I still think he's the number 3 player in the world. In terms of Brooks, I'll touch on that. He's just built up so much trust equity with me through the years. I've been there for all the major championship wins. Here's the thing. People were really backing Brooks last year at this event at 20-1, and I didn't. It was one of the only times I haven't bet Brooks. The form was terrible. He was not playing well on live last year headed into the Masters. There were all types of question marks with the approach play. The around the green stuff was a mess, and he was switching putters right before the Masters. He got rid of the putter that he won 5 major championships with. That putter is back. The approach play is back, and I really, really trust his chipping and around the green game stuff. So I'm a big proponent for Brooks. Joe, kind of kicking it back to you. It's interesting because I feel like Scotty and Rory, you talk to anyone, any casual person, and it seems kind of like a coin flip. Who are you going to take there? The odds board has them pretty closely, 1-2 there, plus 450, plus 650. They're pretty tight, right? But you go to the DFS and you look at DraftKings pricing, and a $1,300 price gap between Scotty Scheffler and Rory McIlroy isn't necessarily indicative of how close I would say the sportsbook managers have this thing. Is that price gap enough for you to just auto go Rory, or is it more of an ownership play? Which one are you leaning to out of those top two?
I would lean Scotty. I think you're paying for floor, Joe. I think that's what you're paying for, is that peace of mind that you get with Scotty. It's just tough to envision Scotty going out there and playing bad. I mean, I think his worst career Masters outing was his debut. It was like a T19 or T20. So it's just hard to envision Scotty playing bad. Whereas Rory, we all know the history. I mean, I won't dig into it, but I mean, it's not hard to kind of tilt your head a little bit and envision Rory going out there and shooting 74 in the first round.
Year 17, man. If not now, let me ask you, Joe, kind of piggybacking on that. When you are looking at the Masters, right? We know this tournament so intimately, right? There are so many incredible trends that now 5 years ago it was like a piece. Now everybody's got a million trends for the Masters. Yeah. There's so much correlation year over year with course history, which I know you do a lot of stuff with, which correlated stat columns. When you are going and picking players for your lineup or betting players for the Masters, are you someone who's more just gut feel, eyeball test, I know what this tournament is, or are you deep and they have to abide by the narratives? They have to align with the trends. They have to fit statistical profiles. Which side of that are you on, if I made you choose one?
Yeah, I'm more on the feel side. Spence and I talk about this a lot. He's oftentimes he's going to fall on the analytical side. I'm going to fall more on the feel side. And with the Masters, as you mentioned, man, course history so much more predictive here than pretty much anywhere we're going to see on the schedule for the entire year. So lean into course history. I'm not scared to play guys that maybe haven't shown the greatest form if the course history is good. I'm sure some of the other guys that are going to come on will talk about kind of on down the slate, but you can pull the trigger on some guys that maybe aren't showing the greatest form here, whereas I might not do that in a regular PGA Tour event.
Yeah, Spence, is he on par there? Are you more on the analytical side versus gut feel eyeball test?
I'm always going to fall on the analytical side, but the one thing I will say to that I find funny in this whole thing is I talk about trends in the trends articles, and I am not a big trends person. I think it's oftentimes a very lazy narrative that people take to try to, you can skew numbers essentially to make them say whatever you want. The funny thing about that, though, is the article that I got nominated for FSWA Golf Writer of the Year that ended up winning is my 7 Deadly Sins article, which is a trends article at the end of the day.
I'm going to ask you about it.
Yeah, so I can't really say anything negative about trends here. Joe hit it on the head. It is a super predictive course. It is the one major that takes place at the same venue every single year. You know exactly what you're looking for at the end of it. I will say, though, I think for DFS, I would be more open-minded. Look at ownership, be able and be willing to think outside of the box. I think if we're talking from outright betting and who's going to win, a lot of those trends do matter. And it's hard for me to come on a show and say that trends are important because I never, ever give that answer, but it's a little bit more indicative of success than usual with it. But I'm always going to be analytical to the very end, and I'm always going to trust my model, even when signs tell me not to in some situations.
Yeah, Spence, I'm going to circle back to that 7 Deadly Sins piece because I have a question for you on it in just a second. Joe, thank you for being the best leader that I've ever been a part of in terms of a team in the golf content industry. Thank you for making time here. You are the captain that steers the ship here. And I think I speak for all of us. We greatly appreciate you, and thanks for making some time for us on the show. We're going to let you go. We're going to bring someone out of the bullpen here in just a second, but thank you, Mr. Nicely. You have a great evening and enjoy the Masters.
Thank you guys, man. It was fun to do this again. I hadn't done this in a while, so it's fun to hop on and talk to you guys. It's always great to catch up with both of you. Thank you both for making the time to do this. We appreciate so much what you do. I know all the folks watching do as well. And I just hope everybody enjoys all the guys that are going to pop on tonight. We really wanted to make this a team effort. These guys are super sharp. A lot of great up and comers in this industry. So listen to what they say and have a great Masters week. Thanks, guys. I'm out.
Boss of the year. See you, buddy. All right. Now that the boss is gone, it's time for the employees to play a little bit. I'm going to bring on our next guest here. Ian McNeil. Ian writes the course preview piece. I think it is one of the most detailed course previews that I've ever seen. Scouting the Routing is the name of it. It is awesome. It goes into every single strokes gain category. It gives you the info that matters most for the tournament each and every week. Welcome to the RotoBaller Master Show. Ian McNeil, how are you this evening?
Joe, Spence, first time, I think it's been all three of us. I think we've each talked individually. So, yeah, going to be great. First 15 minutes were great with Joe. And I know the last couple guys behind me are going to give a lot of great info as well. So, yeah, excited to hop on. Got the Georgia Peach shirt that we're rocking right now. PTO secured for Thursday, Friday. So we're going to have one more day of work and then just dive into about, 48 hours of Masters coverage here.
That sink into the couch, find a comfortable spot. But before we do so, Ian, course stuff on Augusta National. A lot of talk today in the press room about the amount of trees that went down, maybe some new sight lines at Augusta. I know that there was some re-engineering of, I believe, 4 greens on the property that, Augusta National is so good. They've got everything down to the square inch. They're going to put it back just the way we remember it. But what is your biggest takeaway from any changes potentially that you think could impact 2025? And what is the number one trend in terms of the course setup that aligns with the fit of maybe certain players?
For sure. I mean, of all the course previews I do on a yearly basis for RotoBaller, I think the Masters one's one where there's maybe less for the general public to learn, as opposed to when I write about the Valero or the Valspar, or a course where maybe you're not inundated with it from a very early age if you've followed in the sport. Certainly the trees being down and the weather are probably the two biggest kind of storylines coming into the week. A lot of talk early on about maybe this being a bit more of an easier Masters than we've seen in years past, a little bit less time for the sub air, not just with the heavy rains on Monday, but some projected rains on Friday morning. So don't be afraid. Maybe I've kind of isolated some like unders on low score props, maybe to deploy on Thursday, Friday, if we do start seeing the greens a lot more receptive than we're used to at Augusta National. I think that's definitely an angle to take. But yeah, in terms of the key stats, I don't think much changes. A lot would have to happen to the layout of Augusta National, I think, to change one of the most predictive courses we see year in, year out, just like Joe writes about every single week. So yeah, as per usual, it's going to be second shot dominant. Short game is going to be obviously very imperative as well. Those are two of the key trends. Maybe the biggest week for strokes getting around the greens we see all season. So, I know we'll talk about some guys in the 9K range and the 8K range that maybe have some of those question marks around the green game. This is one of the golf courses where you really, I don't think, can get away with a lackluster short game. If you look at the past champions here, guys like Scheffler, Rahm, Reed, Sergio, the list goes on. They're all world-class around the greens players. So I would say the one thing, and not to ramble on and on, but the one thing that's maybe I've disagreed with in terms of the general consensus is Augusta being just a straight bomber's paradise. I've heard a lot of like the trend articles that you see every single year, kind of just knocking players just because they don't quite carry the ball, maybe 290 to 300 yards off the tee. But I think Augusta's a lot more, not purely positional, but it penalizes misses a lot, maybe more than you would think. Obviously, it's a lot easier to hit the fairways here. But the missed fairway penalty, if you go back into the last 5 years, sits right above tour average, like in the top third of tour average in terms of if you do miss these fairways, as forgiving as they are, it lines up with some of the Florida courses right between places like Doral, Bay Hill, the Players, right in that mix. So I'd be a little bit less inclined just to look at pure distance. I think total driving is a huge stat this week. But if a guy's really going to be spraying the ball off the tee and you can't really trust that accuracy off the tee, I don't think this is a golf course where pure distance is going to be able to get the job done.
Yeah, Spencer, your kind of thoughts on two things. One, the importance of things like carry distance and just pure ability to send it off the tee. And two, to me, I like looking at the weather. I know we had some rain yesterday. I think we're going to get the firm, fast Augusta, but this course radically changes how it plays when it gets rain. Last year, I think Bryson destroyed round one on a soft Augusta National. When things firmed up, it lends itself to the skill set of a completely different player. Like Ian said, the chipping, the around the green, the artistry, the shot making, all that stuff comes more into play. I think we get firm and fast conditions. Would you agree with that take? And where do you fall on where Ian was at in terms of off the tee, carry distance, bombing being a priority?
Well, I actually wrote in one of my articles kind of with what Ian was alluding to himself with it. I think there is an distance matters. If you're not in the top 40% of this field, you are probably dead in the water at the very beginning. But I agree with Ian's sentiment of this is not just a bomb and gouge property. If it were, Bryson DeChambeau wouldn't have taken 8 attempts to come inside of the top 20. And you just talked about it, Joe. It took until attempt number 8 when you got extremely wet conditions, when he tore up the course on Thursday and kind of just held on for the final 3 days to get himself into that position there, and did not look as good on Friday, Saturday, and Sunday as he looked on Thursday. I do think that as the week goes on, you're going to get a much speedier test. And the question that ends up coming into play there, and more what I was curious about in my model, was not just pure distance. How do players historically play on long tests? There are players, Corey Connors, Russell Henley. These are not long golfers off the tee. They are, sub 290 in a lot of spots that, one, you see an uptick in their driving distance at these longer courses, not substantially, but 5-10 yards goes a long way when you get a wide open layout. And two, you see them as top 10 players in this field on courses that are over 7,400 yards. So I think there's a specific skill set here that matters. One of the things that I've talked about is it's one of those very nuanced courses to where it's risk reward in the sense that you have to take risks on the par 5s and you have to play things safe on the par 3s and the par 4s, create all the opportunities that you can on the par 5s, salvage a score elsewhere. And that's one of the things that I ran in my model this week. That's one of my favorite categories. It's aggression meets bogey avoidance, essentially. So it looks for the guys that are most likely to be able to score on those longer par 5 holes, the birdieable holes, and the guys that are going to be able to salvage a score elsewhere. And that's something that I've been doing since I've been putting a model out at RotoBaller for the last 6 or 7 years. And the person, and it's been a lot of chalky masters that we've seen over and over again. So elite players have elite statistics, but inside of my model, that one specific category has the winner of the tournament has been inside of the top 10 in that area. So that's something that I did dive into heavily. And if we're talking about trends, that is something that I did look at this year.
Yeah, I think you nailed it with the par 5 scoring being important. Look at Scotty Scheffler's career at Augusta National. On the par 3s and par 4s, Scotty Scheffler 16 over par in his career on the par 3 and par 4s at Augusta National, 44 under on the par 5s. So this is where distance matters. It's not so much on the par 4s. Honestly, I think it comes into play more on the par 5s, because if you can reach them with iron or hybrid and be able to chip, even if you don't land it and hold the green, if you're chipping, you're at a huge advantage. Some of those par 5s, when you think about 15, when you think about 13, when you think about 8, if you can't get there and you've got to lay up short of the water or the creek on those 2 on the back 9 in particular, and then try to get up and down from 80 yards, that's a tough proposition. You'd much rather be in a greenside bunker. You'd much rather be chipping from just off the green. That's where the scoring makes a huge difference for me. And when you guys I'll go to you first, Ian. When you kind of we're looking at this more meat and potatoes range of the DFS salary in terms of, let's go from say 7K to 9K, a ton of good players in there, a lot of data to sort through. Give me a target that you have in this range and maybe like a projection in terms of where you expect them to fall ownership wise.
Yeah, I mean, I would lean pretty heavily into kind of the Joe Nicely school of thought in this, low to mid 8K range. I'm a big fan of Will Zalatoris this week. I really like what we're seeing with the ball striking. In this 7 to 9K range, like you said, the middle tier here, it's very difficult to find a Scotty Scheffler profile. You're not going to find a Rory McIlroy profile. You're really looking for strengths, and you're really trying to kind of differentiate what you think will matter the most. And, Zalatoris, in terms of total driving, in terms of course history, in terms of long iron play, he checks a lot of those boxes for me. So Willie Z, I mean, he's drifted up to 65 to 1 in some spots on odds boards. I'm not really entirely sure where the drift's coming from there. But he's definitely a guy that I've circled as a guy I'll have a lot of exposure to, not just in betting, but DFS markets.
Spence, in that 8K range, we got a couple of guys that we were kind of just alluding to, right? Guys that aren't going to hit it or carry it 300 off the tee, but names who performed well on long golf courses, particularly the Masters in the past. You've got Tommy Fleetwood at 9-1. You've got Shane Lowry at 8,800. Tyrrell Hatton, 8,600. Russell Henley, 8,400. These are not bombers by any stretch of the imagination. If I made you pick one of those four that you like as a DFS potential target this week, you think can play well around Augusta National despite being de-emphasized in the power department, which guy would it be?
So I wrote an article here at RotoBaller to start 2025, and the purpose of the article was to try to find golfers that my year-long model was higher on than consensus seemed to be entering the season. You look like a guy like Maverick McNeely was on there. We've seen some success from him this year. Mm-hmm. There's been some borderline misses. I was really high on Harry Hall. He looked fine last week, but before that, there were a bunch of miscuts and just performances that you didn't necessarily want. The one guy, though, that I was spot on with, and I think we continue to see it has been Russell Henley in these spots. I called him a legitimate top 5 player in the world, top 10 if you just don't want to go so extreme with it. And if you look at the metrics of what he's put together this season, he's inside of the top 6 of my model over a 2-year running perspective in strokes gained total. I talked about that aggression versus bogey avoidance stat. He's the number 1 or 2 player in my model there this week. He's number 1 on bogey avoidance, all the par saving categories. There's a lot to like with Russell Henley, and the ownership for DFS is a little bit higher than I was hoping it was going to be. You look at what he's done at this course historically, it is just top 35 after top 35 after top 35. One thing I will say is I think this is the most upside we've ever seen from a Henley profile, and we've seen him come inside the top 10 here before. So I think this could be the year that Russell Henley can work himself up the leaderboard. I'm going to have a lot of exposure to him in various different markets. And I thought when his number opened up in the outright betting market, I mean, even if you trickle this back into, let's say 2-3 weeks ago, there were rogue 70, 80 to 1s out there. He's now opened up on Monday more in that 55 to 1 range. And we've steadily seen money coming in on him. And I think it's rightfully so. It's probably a little bit of sharp money, a little bit of square money at the end of the day too. But he is my one guy that I will be overly aggressive on this week.
Okay, Ian, I know we got to get you out of here in just a second, but I wanted to ask you about the Enigma, a player that everyone wants to know about heading into Masters Week. I think the sliding scale is a ton of people are betting him. The handle I was checking out on Sportsbook, the amount of people going to that number is extensive, but there's also this sliding scale. We know how low the floor can be. I'm talking about previous Masters champion Jordan Spieth was at the Champions Dinner tonight. Spieth is 9K flat, which I think that's an attractive price point that people will automatically look to, especially if they're clicking Rory or Scotty at the top, right? I think they're going to just, from a number standpoint, have to overlook a lot of those 10 and 9K guys. They probably are eyes immediately drawn to Spieth at that dead even price point. Where are you at? Are you pro Spieth? Are you anti Spieth for the 2025 edition of the Masters?
I bet Spieth last week at the Valero. I liked what we saw coming off of the Valspar, gaining over 7 shots in approach. A place in Valero that he's played very well historically. I thought that was the spot kind of coming into this three event stretch of Valero, Augusta, Harbor Town, where I thought Spieth might nick one or at least come really close to capturing outright. Other than a really hot putting round on Thursday, though, really didn't see a lot from tee to green to be excited with from Spieth. And when you look at the other options kind of in this range, a guy like Tommy Fleetwood, who hasn't finished outside the top 25 in 6 months, a guy like Shane Lowry, who, in my opinion, might be one of the most underrated. Spencer talked about Russell Henley being a guy that he's higher on than maybe seemingly consensus. I think Lowry's like approaching top 10 status. Obviously, doesn't have the win that Henley does yet, but a guy that's continually knocked on the door. The tee to green numbers look great, and he does have a 3rd place finish already to his name here at Augusta. So, as you said, Spieth, with his history at Augusta, is always going to carry that bit of extra attention, especially if a casual audience goes into something like the Millionaire Maker. So I just don't see enough life from the tee to green game. I think Spieth's path to matching that price tag and to catching a guy like Fleetwood or Lowry would just be to make a lot of putts on the greens. So for that reason, I'm just going to take the blue chip tee to green players and kind of pass on Jordan if we do see another magical run at Augusta.
Good take. You don't talk Augusta National without talking Jordan Spieth. You should not start your course research each and every week without reading Ian McNeil's article. Ian, have a good night. Great to see you, my friend. We'll talk soon. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks, guys. Have a great.
All right, from one Ian to another, Spencer, we're just going to keep him coming back in. Mr. Jens Christensen goes by Ian. Excited to talk to you, my friend. We've never met before. You do a ton of the great showdown content for us over at RotoBaller. You operate some of the news stuff for us. You're on top of things each and every week, and excited to see you tonight. Are you ready for Masters Week, my friend?
Oh, absolutely. So watch the practice rounds. Today I just caught a little bit, I even got some peach ice cream and some cookies ordered. Going to make some homemade, Georgia peach ice cream sandwiches, maybe, mix in a little azalea cocktails as well. So, just building it all up all week. Couldn't be more excited for the first major of the year and to talk to you guys and talk to everybody, just about what we're thinking and guys we like and maybe some targets or pivots that we see as viable options.
Yeah, I wanted to ask you a little bit right off the top about lineup construction for the Masters. Do you adjust anything for this week? We get this influx of, I'll call them casual DFS players, guys who have been playing NBA all year, guys who have been playing NFL, guys who have been glued in to all these other sports, who see the contest, they see the Millie Makers, they want action for Augusta National. Do you adjust how you build for this tournament in particular?
Yeah, no, that's a great question, actually. So the way I kind of start is, from the 30,000 foot level view. And in my process, what I really do is try to identify, am I looking at a stars and scrubs build this week, maybe a more of a balanced build. So generally I start with tier ranges. So I look at, hey, okay, do I want to go 1 10K and above, 3 8K, 2 7Ks, and then how do my pieces fit into that? And one thing too that I definitely do, I'm a little more comfortable with during the majors is pricing is generally a little softer, especially in the 8K and 7K range. So I definitely find ways to absolutely hammer those. And most of the casual players are going to, I hate to say use up all your salary because there's nothing wrong with that, as Spencer alluded to earlier. If you start with a different build, like somebody like Xander or Brooks, you don't need to leave that much salary on the table. And I don't think that should necessarily be a hard rule. So I kind of go from there. And then one thing I kind of do is just, again, really, how can I be different? So I think most casual players will go with a balanced build, at least start with Scheffler, Rory, and then try to jam in as many names they can that they know. So targeting LIV players or DP World Tour players, maybe not for this Opens or not for this major specifically, but those are easy pivots to me. For example, in the 7K range, somebody like Patrick Reed jumps off the page to me.
Yep. No, I'm in on Reed as well. Spencer, question for you, like if you're hand building lineups, I don't know if you use an optimizer or you hand build. Do you this is what I do. I like to scroll down and I like to try to find the first thing I do is I want to find my 6K guy. Do you build like that? Do you make your decisions at the top first and then make that help you figure out where to go depending on what salary you have left down at the bottom? Or do you build low to high?
Probably somewhere in the middle. I usually try to build out of a core that I'm going to be using for the week. So like the 2, 3, 4 players that I like the most. I also like what Jens just talked about a second ago. When I was talking at the very beginning of the show, and if you want to play Scotty and you want to play Rory up top, specifically in any of those millionaire contests, one of the ways that you can differentiate a build is by just leaving more salary on the table. 99% of your casual users are going to spend the full $50,000. So, that is a unique way. To me, it's like I said, you immediately get different if you don't start with Rory, Scotty, Morikawa. But if you do want to use one of them, and even if you want to use a Henley or a name like that in there, just leave a little bit of extra money on the table and you'll see how quickly you start getting different lineups based off of that.
Yeah, and just to kind of piggyback off that, one question I get a lot is, well, what's too much salary or how much should I be leaving on the table? And again, I don't really have a hard rule for it, but I generally try to leave. I mean, I'm more comfortable leaving like 300 to 800 on the table. I kind of have a semi-hard rule of no more than 1,000 in general. But again, just depending on my construction, things like that. And again, just like Spencer mentioned, as far as contest selection, if I'm in the Millie Maker, I'm definitely more comfortable even then leaving a little more salary on the table at that point.
Yeah, Jens, another question, kind of when you start to get to this, let's say, call it low 7K, high 6K range, right? I feel like most people are going to be put in a situation where you have to make a decision on what's more important. Is it form or is it fit? Is it how the guy is playing very recently, call it the last 24 rounds, his current form, or is it his long-term fit for a course like Augusta National? How would you prioritize those two if I asked you to rank them 1, 2?
Well, so as far as the Masters goes, I would definitely say that, course history, course fit is a probably number 1 here. Number 2 is form. We've seen guys like Danny Willett, for example, who come up out of nowhere and finish T12 in, I think that was 2022, but still. Now, on a week-to-week basis, it generally just depends. A little bit of a mix of both, I would say. But for this week, I would definitely go fit over form if I had to go 1, 2.
Spence, kind of sort of, teeing that up for you in a sense, obviously the 7 deadly sins piece that you write, one of your best pieces all year. You mentioned you were nominated for it. What's the number 1 sin? Like, what is something you absolutely cannot do and you will redline a guy right off the bat for Augusta National and won't even look at his name on a salary sheet?
So the first 2 sins, which is just cherry picking this, the reason why I put them first is just because the first and second spots are just because if you're doing these 2 things, you're done. And it's not even a statistical category. The first one is if you're over the age of 45, you're eliminated from within my model on it. About 10 players or so that are going to fit that criteria. I think this one, as time goes on, becomes a little bit less sticky on this. And this is the one that always worries me. And it worried me last year with Oberg and even a name like Wyndham Clark. He was a major champion coming into it. I usually like to see at least 3 appearances here. This needs to be their 3rd appearance. It's a very nuanced course that you need to know where you can and cannot miss. The other one would just be the short game statistics with it. But, the interesting thing about this tournament, and I've said this in articles and on a couple podcasts this week, I usually have between 6 to 10 names that survive all 7 of the deadly sins. I had 15 during this go around. That is substantially the most I've ever had. And maybe it speaks to the wide open nature to this tournament compared to what we have seen in a couple of the last other Masters here.
Yeah, that's interesting. And I think a lot of those names, I would imagine you can probably find in the 8K range of this field. Like, is someone, Jens, I was going to ask you, there's a couple of popular options there, I think, in the 8K range. One, of course, is going to be Russell Henley, which I know fits the majority of trends that you're looking for in the incoming Masters. The other one is right there at $8,000 flat, who I think is going to be really popular, and it's Robert McIntyre. You have the lefty narratives. You have the incoming form. He is I would say, a sound chipper of the golf ball. He's starting to round into a little bit of form with the putter, coming off a couple good performances in Florida. Is that a number, if it gets to around, call it 12 to 15% ownership, that you're willing to stomach, or do you have a good pivot off that play if you don't like Bobby Mack there at 8K flat?
Well, first, let me just say I absolutely love Bobby Mack this week.
Me too.
Yeah, he's playing in great form too. I mean, I think the last time he played was 21-22. And I mean, I think he finished 23rd and 22nd, maybe tied for 22nd. So still played well. I mean, and again, the 7 and 8K range is, for me, again, with soft pricing, the range where you can eat, because these are the guys that can, I think, have the most potential to outperform their expectations and easily outperform their salary. Where somebody like Scotty or Rory, yes, they may win or, top 5. But again, it's the other pieces within that. And I really look at the, my lineup as a whole, as opposed to just individual pieces. But in the 8K range, I know I had something here, but I mean, Bobby Mack, Russell Henley were definitely at the top of my list. I know Ian touched on it just a little bit ago, but Will Zalatoris, I think, has been playing phenomenal. And I mean, he looks really good.
Will Zalatoris, just built for Augusta National. Go ahead. Did you have something there, Spencer?
Yeah, I just wanted to very quickly add to what Jens was just talking about, because I really like Bobby Mack this week. To discuss him just for 1 second, it's the lefty narrative that you mentioned, Joe. Henley's going to be very popular. Those are two names I'm going to have this week in builds. But if you are trying to find leverage here, just so we don't give all the popular names, I think Cantlay's kind of interesting at the price. I'm going to be backing Minwoo Lee. I think the general consensus with Minwoo is that the price tag is too high for most people. I'm usually anti-Minwoo Lee in most tournaments. I had him 2 weeks ago in Texas. He was the number 2 win equity player for me. When I see things like that, I normally want to bet them. Ended up hitting an outright on him, thankfully, there. Not going to be as high in my model this week of what we're looking at as that second place win equity total, but you can make stats do a lot of funky things. And that's one of the things with Minwoo here is when I looked at driving distance, I looked at proximity from 200 plus yards. I looked at weighted around the green play. That's going to be specifically for Augusta, and then weighted putting, which is going to be the same answer there. There was one golfer in my model to grade inside the top 15 of all 4 of those categories. Not Scotty. It's not Rory. It was Minwoo Lee. So I think Minwoo might be the pivot of all pivots this week if you are trying to get contrarian in a spot. Yeah. There's going to be volatility, by the way. I just want to throw that out there.
There is. And I wanted to ask you guys, because speaking of that, so, Bobby Mack's going to eat up a lot of popularity. Henley's going to eat up a lot of popularity. I think we're all in consensus agreement that we like both of those players. The other one in the 7K range, it's going to be uber popular this week, in my opinion, that I want nothing to do with. And you can tell me I'm wrong. I'm kind of hoping that you do, but I am not going to be clicking Sepp Straka. And there are names right around Sepp Straka. There's another Australian that I know you're fond of, Spencer. You've got guys like Dustin Johnson. The names it's just ugly to look at. Sam Burns, Matt Fitzpatrick. It's hard to create a case for any of those guys right now, which was one of the reasons I think Sepp's going to eat up so much right there at 7,600. Jens, before we get you out of here, do you have a take on Straka this week? And if you like him, or if you don't, who would be a decent pivot right there around the same price?
Yeah, so in a few builds that I've done earlier this week, I had him in there, and just the more I looked at it with him in it, it just didn't make much sense to me. I think Spencer, based on your model, projected, around 16% ownership. I know that's early. And I realized I had missed a little bit of your question, Joe, but with the, majors limited field, I'm okay with eating a little bit more ownership as far as like somebody like Bobby Mack goes. Another lefty narrative that I kind of like, he's coming off a missed cut, is Akshay Bhatia in that 8K range. But for that 7K range pivot, Patrick Reed I mentioned, but Keegan Bradley is somebody that I really like. I mean, priced at 7K on DraftKings, I mean, that's pretty much a 6K player or high-end 6K player. And for the upside that you get and the course history he has, the form he's coming in at, I just think that that's a great pivot off of Straka, and you get the salary savings as well.
Good stuff, Jens. We appreciate everything that you do. If you need DFS showdown content for the Masters, we know you're going to be playing Friday. We know you guys are going to be teeing it up Saturday. We know you're getting in contests to try to get it all back Sunday. Make sure you check out his pieces each and every week. A ton of good research. Great to meet you, my friend. We'll talk soon.
All righty. Thanks for having me.
Spence, before we get to the next guest, you got a Straka take for me? Were you in or out?
So he's a positive value in my model based off of the price that he is. He is the fourth worst leverage that I have on the board. My model is lower than consensus on him. I think I am fine letting him beat me. And I like the two names that Jens mentioned. Keegan Bradley and Patrick Reed were the two most mispriced players that I had inside my model this week. I think there's spots where you can go even lower on the salary scale, less ownership, and get just as much upside, if not more.
I love that. Keegan might just mess around and auto qualify for this Ryder Cup team and throw the whole world into a frenzy here headed into Bethpage. All right, let's bring on our next guy, the author, new to the team, author of the Horse for the Course piece. And this is the ultimate horse for the course. I hope I said that right, in Augusta National that we see all year on the PGA Tour. Welcome into the program, Todd McGill. What's up, Todd? How are you this evening?
How's it going, guys? Appreciate you getting me on the show tonight.
Absolutely. Todd, where are you coming to us from?
I'm from Knoxville, Tennessee, so Joe Nicely's neck of the woods.
Joe Nicely's neck of the woods. We love our guys up there. We appreciate you making some time for us, Todd. Horse for the Course piece you do, one of the most important pieces that we see each and every week. And obviously Augusta National is probably one of the most predictive courses that we see each and every year. We're kind of making our way down the odds board, Todd. I don't know how much you've caught of the show, but we're starting to get into like the 7-6K range. Is there a guy within that range that you feel comfortable clicking in a DFS lineup that you think has shown the ability to master Augusta National?
Well, I wasn't sure of the we going from DraftKings pricing.
Yeah, like someone like Patrick Reed. Like, are you comfortable going there with Patrick Reed in terms of a horse for the course pick? He's a guy, obviously, who I think you look at a statistical profile of Patrick Reed, and it doesn't seem like, he lacks so much off the tee. The approach play is very inconsistent. This might not be a good spot for him, but year over year, he's shown the ability to show up here and find himself inside the top 10 with a chance at the lead.
Yeah, I think Patrick's kind of one of those guys that, if you look at the stats week to week, he's not necessarily somebody that pops on the putting greens and around the greens necessarily, but once he gets at Augusta National, for some reason, that's kind of been where he's kind of made up a lot of ground, I think, especially, when we saw him about 2 or 3 years ago, when he was battling it out with Tiger in 2019. And I think, Augusta has this way of bringing out sort of strengths or weaknesses in people's games that are everywhere else. But once they get to Augusta National, some of that kind of goes out the window. I think, a lot of that goes with especially somebody like Cantlay that's able to get more competitive reps in and kind of figure out the golf course a little better year over year. I think is kind of, some of the better players I feel like struggle when they first start. Colin Morikawa kind of comes to mind. His first go around here, he didn't do very well. I think he finished in like the top 40. But since then, he's really kind of gotten it under control. And he was actually in my horse for the course article this week.
Spencer, kind of going to you. We talked about Keegan and we talked about some other guys, but there are some guys that have put together some top 10s who are just in awful form right now. I'm talking about Cameron Young, right there at a price point, back to a 7th and a 9th the last 2 times at Augusta. he was decent at the Valero. I think he topped 20 there, but from a statistical standpoint, appears to be a game in complete disarray. Are you willing to ignore some of that stuff and just look at, hey, this guy is seemingly figured out a plan of attack for Augusta National, and now it's just a matter of execution?
I mean, I think that's how you get leverage with that. I mean, whether Cameron Young is the guy that I am personally going to use, I don't know. There's probably even grosser answers that I could come up with. Like, I'm probably going to have Sung Jae Im this week, which is as gross as it gets with his iron play. But you take a guy like Sung Jae, Adam Scott. There's some things in Adam Scott's profile, the more that I dive into it, that I kind of like. He has an increase in ball speed and club head speed in both of those two areas. And if you look at the results, not good this year. It's not what you want to see, but this is a wide open venue. And if we're talking about golfers that maybe are struggling for one reason or another, and maybe in Adam Scott's position, it's just trying to get quicker, trying to get longer. Like, that is when you're 44, whatever he actually is years old. It's not usually what you expect. And maybe the game has just gone south trying to compete with these younger kids at this point. It doesn't mean I'm playing a lot of those guys, but I guess to circle back to the question that you asked, I am willing to ignore some of that. There is a predictive rollover nature at this venue, and I'm just going to throw a couple names out there. It doesn't mean that these are names that I'm necessarily playing over and over again, but these are the best values that I had in my model, the guys that were the most mispriced. So number 1 was Keegan Bradley. Number 2 was Patrick Reed. Those are the two I've talked about. Get a little bit grosser here on some of these. JJ Spawn, 6,800. Michael Kim, 6,700. Your boy Denny McCarthy ended up being a top 40 person for me in all iterations of how I ran my model at 65. The ownership's starting to trickle up a little bit. Some of my upside totals, like Joe Highsmith, I don't know. I mean, I don't know if I trust him, but he's going to be 1% owned. Harris English, that's probably about the range there that I'm stopping. I don't love too many players lower than that on the price scale. You could convince me of a Kevin Yu and his ball striking potentially, but it's about the bottom end of what I'm personally looking at.
Yeah, speaking of kind of the bottom end, Todd, if I asked you for a sleeper pick, someone that you think could kind of come out of nowhere or that isn't one of the main names that we've discussed in the show that you think could have an actual chance to find himself on the leaderboard on a Sunday afternoon in Augusta, Georgia, who would it be?
I mean, I don't know if this is necessarily considered a sleeper, but I feel like the further he spends, the larger amount of time he spends away from the PGA Tour, you kind of forget about a lot of these guys. But, the way Phil Mickelson seems to kind of just pop out at Augusta National, I don't know. I think it goes back to the fact of being able to get it around and into the hole at Augusta National that comes with the prowess that he has around the greens. We just saw it 2 years ago. I think he finished tied second. And then he's really been competing well on Live. If you've paid attention to the leaderboards, he's turning out top tens. He was kind of in the mix last week in Miami. So, from a course history side of things, there's probably not anybody in the field that's got more than he does coming in this week. Maybe Bernhard Langer, but I don't think anybody's necessarily putting him in DFS lineups. But if you wanted to get risky with it, I think Phil might be a decent option to lean into.
Spence, you got a sleeper, makes a decent top 20 bet or someone sort of very off the radar?
I mean, I'd probably circle back to the Kevin Yu answer that I gave. I do not trust the short game whatsoever here. It's going to be his first attempt, but if you're looking for specific skill sets of somebody that can actually find a higher end finish, I do think Kevin Yu, in the right situation with the right ball striking, can work his way up there. And, it probably would be like, if we want to talk about more elite players from there, it's probably the Harris Englishes, the Denny McCarthys, these names that can churn out a top 10 and be more in the thick of things than you would expect to start the week.
Yeah, absolutely. I'll touch on Denny real quick because Spencer, he's kind of always my guy, but there are a couple of things that are really trending in a very positive direction. I'm going to play him at 6,500. I know a lot of people are. I've also bet him top 20 at 3.5 to 1 to finish inside the top 20. I think he has a top 5 short game of any player in the field. We know what a good putter he is, but he's underrated how good of a chipper and around the green game that Denny McCarthy possesses. I think that he also raises his baseline performance level on difficult golf courses, which we know that this is. You look back at what he did at Torrey Pines a few weeks ago, even going back to the Memorial, even going back to U.S. Opens where he's played well in the past. Denny McCarthy picked up ball speed this offseason, and I think it was a concerted effort to be able to compete on these longer golf courses. When you see him show up to a place like Torrey Pines and be in the final group, I think that that's paying off. But the big thing you can't miss on Denny McCarthy this week is he has gained strokes on approach in 5 of his last 6 tournaments. That is not what Denny McCarthy ever does. So if his irons are competent and beyond that, it is a very good sign for his game. I look back through his career and all stats from every measured start going back to his first PGA Tour career start in 2017. He has never had a 6 tournament stretch where he gained strokes on approach in 5 of those starts. That's what the run he's coming into Augusta National with. I trust his short game. I love the fact that he's gotten a little bit of extra pop in the bat this year, and the irons are just clicking right now. I think he makes a nice top 20 bet. He's matched up against Sam Burns, who I really don't like this week in a head-to-head matchup market as well, which I took a piece of Denny. Spence, I know that you are big in terms of a lot of the props and positionals. Do you have one for me that you could, I know a lot of that's behind the premium piece, but that you could let loose for the Masters show tonight?
Unfortunately, the one that I would have loved to have given here was Patrick Reed over Sahith Theegala for a matchup. We nuked that price from the 120s into the 160s. I think you can still find this other matchup still available right now. We've talked about Keegan Bradley a lot. You can find Keegan Bradley in the 120s against Tom Kim. I like that matchup a lot this week also.
Love it. Todd, before we get you out of here, let's just keep it real nice and simple and sweet. Who's going to win the 2025 Masters? Give me your favorite pick and the best odds that they have available.
Honestly, I think if I want to lean into the Rory aspect. I think that storyline just for anybody that's been watching golf for the last 10 years is probably leaning into that. But honestly, I feel like Colin Morikawa would be a good pick here. If you look at how his strokes gained putting, which that's kind of where he seems to kind of fall off in regular tour bents, where he's literally improved every year over the last 4 years that he's played at Augusta National. Last year, his average was 0.93 on strokes gained putting. Like I said, the chipping is the biggest worry, but he has kind of figured that out in years past too, which it goes back to just getting more reps in. Augusta's kind of a weird place. It changes from round to round your strategy about how you're going to attack certain pin locations. I was just listening to Pat Mayo's show earlier today where he was talking to Michael Kim, and he was explaining like on hole number 17, if the pin's in the back left, normally you would want to try to be short because of all the green you have to work with, but because of how that slope goes, you would actually be better off going long of that green and almost short-siding yourself a little bit. And I think getting that level of competency going around Augusta National is really kind of what's, I think, propelled Colin Morikawa to have 3 solid finishes the last 3 years here.
Yeah, he's figured it out, and there's a reason he's in your horse for the course piece. He talked in his presser today when he wasn't taking shots at the media. He talked about basically how he showed up to Augusta at first and had heard all the stories how you got to hit a draw at Augusta, and he was almost trying to force that into his game. And the last couple of years, he's sort of adapted and realized, let me just hit my cut and let me hit the fairways. And that narrative has kind of been dispelled for him, and he has just slowly figured this place out and gotten incrementally better each year. He's the one guy that I'm most concerned that I'm not betting this week. So Colin Morikawa is the guy for you, Todd. Appreciate you making some time to join us on the show, man. Keep up the great work, penciling in those articles over at RotoBaller. We'll talk soon, brother.
Absolutely. Thank you, guys.
All right, later. Spence, let's kind of wrap this thing up, dude. So let's talk the top of the board, Spence, because I don't know if you caught preferred lines last night, but I'm in a weird spot, man, because I ended up fading the top 6 guys on the odds board. Not a position that I think I want to be in for the Masters, nor I thought I would be in. But I essentially passed on all of them and then went with a tag team combo of Justin Thomas and Xander Schauffele, both at 25-1, versus taking one of those top guys. I'm not someone who bets I'm not going to bet a Rory 6.5-1 or a Scotty. And the other 4 guys, essentially Morikawa, Rahm, Bryson, and Ludwig, they all seem to have like a door that left a narrative for me to just say I'm out, right? And that doesn't always feel like the case for me. And it wasn't like a screened in door that was closed. It was a door that's wide open. If it's Ludwig, I can point to there's no way he goes second first. There's no way he repeats an 8 strokes game putting performance. There's no way I'm going to bet a guy when his irons are slipping. With Jon Rahm, he's not playing that great on live. You look at his tee to green stuff and it's way down. His approach numbers aren't there. I just don't believe in it. There's just ways to escape and formulate a narrative that you don't bet any of those guys. Did you end up on any of them? Give me a little bit of insight to what you've gone with at the top of the board.
I also skipped out at on the very top of the board. And, the last 2 years, when we look specifically, I have come on every single show that I've done, and I've said, Rory, it's Rory's time. I think the big difference when we look at the Rory situation this year, I understand the form is much better. This is arguably the best form that he's had entering the Masters maybe ever. I mean, at least during a lot of these recent attempts. I mean, he comes in with 2 wins this season. A lot of those tournaments, so like we look at the last 2, I was betting him as a double-digit sort of a name. He was 11, 12, 13, 14-1. He didn't open at the 6.5 sort of a range here. I couldn't get there with him at that price. If he beats me, he beats me, and there's certainly the potential that he does. I worry about Scotty maybe more than most people do at the very top. I think he's getting slept on, and anytime that's the case, I know we can talk about trends and narratives that nobody's won back-to-back Masters. Well, I mean, Scotty's been as dominant as anybody who's not named Tiger Woods, as we've seen for a really long time. So at any point, he can turn the game on and get back to where he was last year. I wanted to bet Colin Morikawa. I came into the week planning to bet Colin Morikawa. I decided not to, and it has nothing to do with the Sunday answers. I know that we can talk about that over and over again, that he can't seem to get across the finish line. I think that's more hearsay. That's more, winning on Sunday. There's a lot of luck that comes into play with that. It's the Xander answer that I talked about for years. I was always higher than consensus on Xander because you can't win until you can win. And then when you can win, the narrative was never there in people's minds. And I think Morikawa will eventually get back there. I just couldn't get there at the price. And then when you talk about Oberg specifically, I just don't envision a scenario where he goes second and first and wins this thing. I think the price, unfortunately, he missed the cut last week. I thought he was going to be a really good fade candidate for DFS if he would have put up a better finish last week. And instead, he misses the cut, and now nobody wants to be on him. And it kind of circles back to even what I said at the beginning. 15 names qualified for me in the 7 deadly sins. Trends are not the only thing that matters for me. I think when you're looking for only trends, you're going to eliminate names that you should be looking for. But the very first name that I bet this week was Brooks Koepka. I think the best you can get him right now, I believe there's a 41-1 out there over on a site like Bookmaker. He's more in the 30s at a lot of these other legal markets. I mean, to me, this is a live betting tournament. I'm just going to take a couple shots, see where I'm at after a day or two. And I don't see a need to have to force it to try to hit a winner this week.
Yeah, I can't. That's really going low. So I started with Xander. I think he's still the third best player in the world.
Yes.
Look,
yes.
Here's the thing. You're gonna if you basically mathematically take the odds board and equate them to win equity percentage, what the odds makers are telling you is that Scotty Scheffler and Rory McIlroy hold about a 42 to 44% chance to win the Masters. If you take those same mathematics and analytics and apply it to Xander Schauffele, you're going to tell me those guys have 44% and Xander has a 4% chance to win the Masters? I don't believe it. If he wins this week, he holds actively 3 of 4 majors. The strokes gain approach stuff at the Valspar was huge for me. Not only was he good there, not only was he good in last year's majors, this guy is the modern day big game hunter that we expected out of Brooks Koepka. He's been the second best player in major championships over the last 5 years. I don't bet those guys at the top. I don't think you can sustain making money long term betting Scotty 4-1 or Rory 6.5-1 to win a tournament, but you will not. I will say this unequivocally, you will not get Xander 25-1 at any of the next 3 majors after this. It is a value proposition based on the risk associated with a lot of people believing that he's still dealing with the rib injury, and I'm willing to take on that risk because I feel like it's built in well to the price.
For me, if there were 2 names, and maybe my card, will see what happens over the next 24 hours until tee time happens. If there were 2 names that are the closest to get on my card, it would be Xander, like you talked about. I also think that the drift that we've seen with Hideki Matsuyama is starting to get a little bit too high. We have not mentioned him at all on this show. Not one person came on and talked about him. I didn't talk about him, and I have him as one of the 6 or 7 favorites in this tournament when it comes to win equity. I think he is being slept on right now, and we'll see. Hideki, if we can get, I think the best right now in the market looks to be a 35. It's another book that's not a legal market. A legal market that's going to be at a 33.
Yeah,
I think
33.
that's about 5 to 10 points too high, if we're being honest here.
It's pretty good, and look, I think it's a component of it. He's starting to leak oil, right? From what we saw early in the season, like obviously a record-breaking performance at the Century, but slowly the iron play has started to drift in a not so positive direction, including last week at the Valero. But I will say this: Augusta National is the ultimate course on the PGA Tour that rewards elite short game and chipping more than any other course that I see. It is more correlated to success than anywhere. I ran a stat model, the first time I've ever done this, strictly a short game stat model. I brought in every filter that you could possibly bring: strokes gain around the green at Augusta, strokes gain around the green during majors, strokes gain around the green on difficult short grass conditions, strokes gain around the green on just bent grass greens, everything. I've tried to throw as much stuff into the blender as possible, and the number 1 short game all hands team player in this year's Masters, number 2 is Scotty Scheffler, number 1 is Hideki Matsuyama. He is trustworthy out of the sand. He is trustworthy chipping from anywhere. If he can get the iron play back to, he's one of the most greatest ball strikers of this generation. If we can get a glimpse of that, I think the other areas of his game are well suited, and you're getting definitely a value price up there at 33.
Yeah, top 5 of my model at long courses. And if you are looking at just the proximity numbers, second in my model over 2-year duration, I know we're starting to extend the numbers there if we've gone south, but second in my model from 175 to 200, 13th from 200 plus, the number 1 projected short game player at an Augusta comp, Hideki Matsuyama. I've kind of talked myself into this, that I might add this. I'll drop it up in Discord if I do, but if you've made it this far in the show, you've read any of my articles this week and haven't seen Hideki on there, I think Hideki's going to probably be the name that rounds up this card at this point.
Spence, thanks for making the time. Thanks for co-hosting and helping steer the ship with me this week. 30% off is what we're offering right now for a RotoBaller premium sub. That's good for your package. You put out more content than I think anyone in the industry, and it is so incredibly detail-oriented, so visually appealing, makes sense. You're a great writer, and you bring in as much information as anybody that I've seen. You've got 5 or 6 pieces already up on the RotoBaller PGA piece. I know more coming over the next couple of days. Before I get you out of here, factoring in, like, let's just say you have everybody on the table, because I don't know who, but I want to ask you for your one and done pick, because you've sort of made that one of your staple pieces over at RotoBaller. Is this a piece where you burn one of the top names? Is this a tournament where you're comfortable taking that? If you have everyone on the table, who would be your one pick in terms of a one and done, knowing that you can't use them for the rest of the season to win the 2025 Masters?
I've always said that when I've written a one and done piece, the Masters specifically, I know there's a big purse that's up for grabs, but it is the easiest tournament to actually lock in a legitimate total just because the rollover predictability that happens here. I'm usually, and look, I didn't have Scotty Scheffler last year here, and it was a detriment to not go down that route, but I usually get a little bit more aggressive in this tournament than I'm going to in the Players or any of the other majors that we see. Like, I kind of like the concept here of, if you're in a one pick contest, I would take a potential swing at Min-Woo Lee. I think we just talked about Hideki Matsuyama. He is certainly in play here. And then if you're in a two pick contest or even in a one pick contest, you can consider the live guys that you're only going to get 4 cracks at this year. So all of a sudden, names like Brooks Koepka become a lot more valuable. I don't think, and this is the unfortunate part of a one and done, I don't think I have Hideki or Min-Woo left. I don't even have Henley left. So I'm going to have to go diving in to see who my actual pick will be. And that's something that you can find at RotoBaller tomorrow when I put it out. But, look at course history. It does matter. I don't know if you necessarily need to go straight to the top of the board. You can, but, find who you like and just be comfortable with the pick, because there's a lot that you can find from past years.
Rotoballer.com. That's where you can find all of Spencer. That's where you can find all of me. The promo code is Masters. We are a part of that team, and we would love for you to join us. On behalf of Spencer, on behalf of Joe Nicely, on behalf of all the people over at RotoBaller who were kind enough to take 15 minutes out of their night to join us on this show. Enjoy the Masters. Best of luck. We hope to catch you guys at the next major. If you enjoyed this show, leave us a comment. Tell us that you liked it, and maybe we'll run it back here for the U.S. Open in a few weeks. Spence, great to talk to you. We'll catch you guys later, gang. Appreciate everything. Thanks again. Subscribe to RotoBaller PGA on X. Subscribe to the YouTube channel. Use that promo code. Join the team. We'll see you later. Enjoy the Masters. Peace.